नमः। आज आए श्याम मोहन, आज आए श्याम मोहन, आज आए श्याम मोहन। रासमंडल खेलने आज आए श्याम मोहन, आज आए श्याम मोहन। रासमंडल खेलने आज आए श्याम मोहन। बांसुरी की धुन के लागे तन नन तुम तनो। बांसुरी की धुन के लागे तन नन तुम तनो। बजे ताल मृदंग के धुन ध्रुकुटत गिटत ध्रुकुटकतम। बजे ताल मृदंग के धुन ध्रुकुटत गिटत ध्रुकुटक। तो आज आए श्याम मोहन, रासमंडल खेलने आज आए श्याम मोहन। पद्मनाभ तुम्हारी लीला क्या करूं मैं सावरूं। पद्मनाभ तुम्हारी लीला क्या करूं मैं सावरूं। ताप संकट हरण आयो सो हमारो तुम हरो। ताप संकट हरण आयो सो हमारो तुम हरो। आज आए श्याम मोहन, रासमंडल खेलने आज आए श्याम हलरावे दुलराई मल्हावे। हलरावे दुलराई मल्हावे। जोई सोई कछु गावे, जसोदा हरि पालने झुलावे। हलरावे दुलराई मल्हावे। जोई सोई कछु गावे, जसोदा हरि पालने झुलावे। मेरे लाल को आओ निंदरिया, काहे नानी सुलावे। मेरे लाल को आओ निंदरिया, काहे नानी सुलावे। तू काहे ना बेगी सुआवे, तू को कान्हा बुलावे। हलरावे दुलराई मल्हावे, जोई सोई कछु गावे। जसोदा हरि पालने झुलावे। Yes, Vishwa.
Hi, Ramnath.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I do not have the Zoom link. I only have your.
Okay. All right, I'm here. Bye.
Okay, very good.
हलरावे दुलराई मल्हावे, जोई सोई कछु गावे। जसोदा हरि पालने झुलावे। So Harshit, are we all set? So namaste everyone, and welcome to the final session of the first cycle of the Yuva Svadharma Seekers Forum meetings. May I request everyone to please turn on your videos. And these are the ground rules. And this is to ensure that we're all respectful of each other's time, each other's commitment, and also of the speaker. So a couple of people have messaged because of last minute issues they could not join, but they will hopefully be able to see um, some recorded version. All right. It is indeed a great privilege and a pleasure for me personally, and I think on all of your behalf, I can say in having Professor Vishwa Adluri with us. He really needs no introduction at one level, so I will not really attempt to introduce him um, because his accolades are too many, it will take too much time. And you can find out in the web about what all he has done. I think all of you are probably aware to some extent, and I sent you a couple of articles, an interview, and so on. I hope you have had the chance to review that. But I would like to say a couple of things that are probably not immediately obvious to everyone, even those of you who are aware of his work broadly. Professor Adluri came to the United States to pursue science. but he switched to philosophy. And this was driven by a personal urge, personal quest. And so he got his first PhD in Western philosophy in New York. That was at the turn of the century. And then he did something quite dramatic that many of us may not be aware of, and I think we should be aware of. He went so to speak, into the lion's den uh, to Germany. I mean, he got his second PhD in Germany, and this was on Indology. This one was in Indology. And the special thing about that really is that he got the PhD and he deconstructed the entire edifice of myth that was built in the 200 years or so of Ney science. In fact, that is seen in his first book and also second book on philology and criticism. And, you're all probably aware of it. I think many of us are broadly aware of it, but not the details of it. But I think getting to know of that should in itself be an inspiration. I will not go into the details of all the struggles that entailed in obtaining that. And then on the not satisfied with those, he also has a third PhD in Sanskrit. And I think a special thing, I know many people with multiple PhDs, but not all of them earned this way. Getting honorary PhDs is the norm. And so what we have amidst us, a truly outstanding scholar of Indic studies of Indian origin, who also is a practicing Hindu. In addition to all this PhD, when he has spare time other than teaching and so on, he also has an acharya who has traditionally, provided insights into the traditional approach of our Shastras and so on. So we have a multifaceted personality here. Some facets of him you might have come across in interviews and so on. But I dare say that when you all become grandfathers and grandmothers, you will, proudly look back and say, I had a chance to interact with Professor Vishwa Adluri. I think what I have said in itself should be an inspiration. All of the work that he has done actually is really in the last 20 years, maybe even less. And much of it, very recent. So this is hot potato, hot stuff. And most lay literate people will not be aware of it. They will still talk about the Aryan invasion and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Well, I think I have said too much probably. I'm sorry for taking this much time, Professor Adluri, but I'd like to extend to you a very warm welcome. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Ramnathji, for that generous introduction. Thank you, each and every one of you who are here today to listen to me speak. Usually, I speak to colleagues who are in the academia and my students. They are obligated to listen to me. Other scholars have to listen to me because I'm an expert. And my students have to listen to me because their grades depend on it. But you are here out of your interest, and that's a very rare honor for me. Ramnathji gave me a very generous introduction, but I would like to share with you my personal story. I am on this side of the camera today, but there was a time when I was on the other side. I I am one of you. And the choices I had to make, the avenues that were open to me were quite limited. I felt alone. I felt different. I had great pride in who I was as a Hindu, but I had no idea how to be a Hindu on a world stage. Even to this day, you see the sheer amount of prejudice out there. Prejudice against African Americans, prejudice against Indians, prejudice against Asian Americans, and so on. When I switched from medical school to study philosophy, I was the only colored person in my classroom. There was no one else. There was just no one else who would even look like me. There is something I want to share with you that I did not share with Ramnath ji. The key event in my life was the death of my mother. She was beautiful. She was international. Everywhere she went, she commanded respect. She knew things about art. She knew things about literature. She knew things about everything. And then she died. Then she died. And at first I pretended that I'm an Indian. We go to medical school. We study sciences. And we make a lot of money, buy a big house, go to India once a year, and that's it. That's all I was thinking. That was the dream that was given to me. That was the life that was prescribed to me. And then I was in medical school. I finished my first year. I finished my second year. I finished my third year. I went into clinicals, and I was sitting in a hospital, working my way up. And then I was posted to a teaching hospital in India where poor people came. And one of the cases there was a woman. I remember very distinctly that her husband was a tailor. She could not have been more than 45 years old. Her body looked like a Chola sculpture of the Devi. She had congestive cardiac failure. In those days, that was terminal. The professor was explaining the situation, and she had murmurs in her heart that are very special for congestive cardiac failure. And we examined her. And some of the students, we were kids, and they had not gone through any trauma. So they didn't understand pain. And they said, "Oh, let me listen to that. Let me listen to that. Oh, can you hear it? That's so cool." And then the professor kept teaching, and the lady was sitting with her exposed. And then I looked at her and I thought of my mother, and I told my professor, "Is it okay if she covered up now?" And the professor said, "Vishwa is so great, isn't he? Great bedside manners. He's going to make an excellent doctor. He's so sensitive." And yeah, I was the dream, the pride. I was supposed to be a great doctor. When I was leaving, I made sure that all her paperwork was done. She caught my hand and she said, "Am I going to die?" She said, "Why doesn't anybody tell me? I keep asking. My husband is sitting there worrying." So I said, "Yeah, you're going to die." And she said, "How many days?" I said, "2 days." And she said, "Thank you. Now I can say goodbye to my husband." Next morning, I came to see her. She had done her hair well. She was sitting there with pride. I said, "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to make you comfortable?" And she looked at me and she said, I'm comfortable. Are you comfortable? She said, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're not like the other people. And that's when it hit me that my mother had died and I was trying to forget everything and I was going ahead with my life, doing all the things I was supposed to do. I would have given anything to have had any one of you as my friend then. Any one of you who would buy me a Diet Coke and sit with me and say, are you going insane? Which I probably was. Then it occurred to me that there's something more going on than what doctors see and treat, what scientists look at and measure. And it occurred to me that there is something that is unique in every person, in the sense that if this woman died, she would be irreplaceable. If when my mother died, she was irreplaceable, but I thought that was something that happened to me. But that it happens to everyone all the time in the universe. That people do not have a normal heartbeat. They do not have a normal heart. They have this heart, and if that stops functioning, you can make it go for a little longer, but when that stops, that's the end. This, I think, is called singularity. Right? When I go to a store, I see 20 apples. Any apple is an apple. But imagine if one of those apples were offered to Ganapati. It becomes blessed with that singularity. If someone says, hey, give me that apple you gave to Ganesha and take this other apple, it's even bigger, redder, more delicious, I'd say, nah, thank you. What is that singular? What is that singular? If I love someone, even to this day, I get anxious. Why? They might die. I don't want to go through that. And then I thought, of course, this is humorously, I will only love people with identical twins. So if one of them dies, I'll have backup. But even that is not true. Even that is not true. And I realized in retrospect that I always knew this. I used to love Ganesha festivals. We would buy an icon, we would do puja, but I knew a time would come when I would have to immerse him in water. And I would always sit and everybody would be singing, Ganapati Bappa Moria Agle Baras Tu Jaldiya. But I knew that this particular Ganesha, which I was adoring for 3 days, is not going to be back. This particular icon is not going to be back. And I think that's when it began in my life, this realization of singularity, irreplaceability, uniqueness. And in science, I always found that that was what was missing. It was all statistical averages, the male heart, the female heart, the liver. Who has the liver? You tell me. Everybody has that specific liver. And so I decided that I should pay attention to this new stuff. The problem of this singularity. And at first it was quite depressing because it was all about death and about how when death comes for me, it comes specifically for me. It's not going to come for some Indian guy. It knows, death knows the singular. Isn't that worth thinking about? Isn't that what we have to worship? Isn't that our ultimate concern in life? And then I did Western philosophy. I wrote a PhD on singularity in Plato, ancient Greek philosophy. And then it still did not answer my questions. Philosophy was talking about universals, genus, and particular, species, members. It was not talking about the specific thing called the singular. Can you imagine how long I had to go before I finally understood that someone had heard what I was looking for? Ekameva advitiyam, that one alone without a second. That every being is a jiva on its own path. Sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes human, sometimes not human. Every name and form that jiva takes. But it is on a singular path to a singular goal. Only that explanation satisfied me. And that Ganesha, not the Ganesha Parameshvara, that Ganesha, that particular slightly lime green icon that I had, he understood that and taught me that singularity. That singularity. That you will not find in any other philosophy. In Christianity, as a group, someone sacrificed himself, you may go to heaven as a group, as part of that group. Here, moksha is a singular goal for every singular jiva. And it helped me that the tailor's wife, my mother, myself, all of us are on this path. And the people I meet and the people I love will be waiting for me to meet according to our karmas until each one of us attains that goal. Now, you tell me, should I have not left medical school? Should I have busied myself, kept busy, without ever addressing myself or the ones I love or the ones I worship as singulars? The ones I love deserve better. I deserve better. Ganesha deserves better. And you all do as well. What should I say to you young boys and girls? Make a lot of money? This is all I can say. All right, enough about me. Are there any questions for me before I continue? Please talk to me. Then there was nobody to talk to. Now there are all of you. At least you can talk to me now. Have you felt this singular? Have you felt this uniqueness that nothing else in the universe is like that? Have you ever loved anybody like that?
Pranit, you want to say
Yeah.
something? Go ahead. Just unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah.
Namaste,
Yeah,
Doctor.
unmute yourself. We are all Indian families. I know the dog will bark, the phone will ring, mommy's gonna call. It's okay. I can deal with it. Unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul. That was a very passionate and moving speech and story. It touched so many parts in my heart.
Oh, thank you.
Something that kind of stood out to me and related to me especially is the realization that you were in denial.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon, as long as parents have an expectation for their child to proceed along a certain path.
I understand.
My question is, once you identify that state of denial and you come out of it, how do you have the courage to take the next step toward whichever million paths there are?
There are no million paths. Your soul has already, through its karmas, created a nature called Svabhava. It will take you on that path no matter what you do. I can run away kicking and screaming. I can pretend to be secular. I can pretend that nothing makes a difference for me except Fridays at the local pub with like-minded people. It's not so. We have natures and we are mortal. We need meaning and we cannot live without it. That's why Krishna tells Arjuna, see, what will restraint do? Your nature will bring you back into battle, Arjuna. There's not, even your so-called choices are. See, this is the problem. We always think of choices in the future. I can choose something for me in the future. We do not understand that who I am today, who each one of us is today, is already a choice that has been made. Your jiva chose to be born as your beautiful brown-skinned Hindu person. This was a choice your jiva made already. Respect that choice. Forget about the choices you're going to make in the future. And I have to tell you, Pranit, do not think I was courageous. I was dragged kicking and screaming into this path. It's not courage at all. At some point, I was just dragged down the stairs, or dragged up the stairs rather. My head was hitting on every step, tuck, tuck, tuck. And finally, I just went with whatever my nature was. You cannot stop it. And the question of courage doesn't even come up.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So I want to share with you a thought experiment whereby about this choice, right? What should I choose? Very easily, I can imagine the choices I could not make, which is to have the normal life my parents would have wanted for me. I'm sure wherever they are now, they're very proud of who I am. But when I told my father, who was a mathematician, that I was going to go into philosophy, he told me, Vedanta, are you going to leave home? Why don't you do something useful? My aunt, who was eating, I remember very clearly, she's a doctor, she likes me. She put the fork down when I told her I was going to do philosophy. Very dramatically, she put the fork like that. She put it down. And she looked at me and she said, I hope you understand that you're going to be a very famous and a good doctor. I don't know what this is about famous, right? I mean, Western parents at least just say you'll make a lot of money. But for Indian parents, there's this added burden that not only should you be wealthy, but you should also be famous. And she said, you know, God gives life and doctors preserve it. And having lost my mother, having lost the tailor's wife, I knew that my aunt was well-meaning, but unfounded. Just unfounded. Now, I'm not saying all of us should take the path I have taken. This is not an exhortation for you to, but that's what Hinduism gives. It allows you to do your karma, whatever it is, right? Arjuna did not become a philosophy professor. He remained the good soldier he was. But Hinduism, as you have learned from Krishnan, provides an economy for your life whereby you acquire dharma and then you acquire artha, then you acquire kama, and then you prepare for moksha. It's that balance that is so precious. It's the four purusharthas, and it's the economy of dharma that allows any one of us, even the tailor and his wife, to face life without fooling themselves of the nature of life. So it is very, very important for all of us to support this dharma by following that dharma. Not just by becoming a professor who listens to professors, but by following that dharma, thousands of sages ahead of us have led meaningful lives. Hinduism is not something new that was just discovered. It is the oldest religion surviving, major religion surviving in the world. It saw religions come, it saw religions go. It saw the East go up, it saw the East go down. It saw the West go up, it'll be there when the West goes down. Unavoidable, uncritiquable, unerasable, unalterable. The truth of the jiva and its destiny to realize itself in Brahman. It cannot be reinvented. Cannot be reinvented. So the exhortation here is not for you to do something new, but to allow your Shraddha to take you further. And do not deny, to whatever extent this voice is in your heart, this feeling that you have, this bhakti that you have, this shraddha that you have. Do not exile that portion of yours. That's my only message. Okay. So about choices, I could have made a choice to just simply continue in medical school. Let's see what that would have gotten me. A job. I'm a very good student, huh? And I put my head to it. I get shit done. I would have invented something, a procedure, maybe a procedure that helps congestive cardiac failure patients. I would be very wealthy. And I would not live in Houston. I would go to LA and buy one of those houses you see in Architectural Digest, clinging to a cliff with the beach outside. And I wouldn't do anything wrong necessarily. I would even do a little charity. That would be my life. Suppose someone told me I could have that life. Let me share something with you. Suppose there was a machine like this called a happiness machine, where you, and because you're Hindus, I suppose your parents, will enter all the parameters of what they think your life ought to be. And you enter this machine, and by directly accessing your experience system, your sensory motor system, give you that life. Before you enter the machine, you could enter all the parameters. You could even say, oh, I want to cure a pandemic. I want to get the Nobel Prize. I don't know what it is about the Nobel Prize. I don't know about your families, but in my family, oh, Nobel Prize, Nobel Prize, okay. So you get the Nobel Prize, you will cure a pandemic, and you will be a great person. Except that it will all be virtual. But you won't know it's virtual once you enter the machine. You'll forget it. Would you enter this machine? Even your parents and your loved ones will be simulated there, and you won't know any different. Perhaps you'll even interact with other people in this matrix. Would you enter such a machine, knowing for sure that it will be better than the life out here? Yes or no?
Can I
Don't say no too easily. This machine is probably the only thing that's going to make your parents happy. It's the only way they will say, wow, my kid is great. This is just what I wanted. This is probably the only way to please them, is to shove them into this machine and get into it yourself so everybody can have their fantasies fulfilled. You will meet true love. And the kids you will have will be none of these wild cards that genetics plays. It'll be perfect. Would you enter such a machine?
Well, I think before you said that it would be like the perfect world, the part where you said we would put in like parameters and stuff, like
Yes.
I kind of feel like we're already in a machine, right? Like it's like I feel like it's already kind of like pre
What machine? What is the machine we are in, you think?
Yeah, I feel like we're already in some kind of like illusionary world like that to begin with. And also I wanted to say that
Isn't it, Shravya, that we already live in an augmented reality world, right? Our reality is already augmented. Sometimes I even wonder if all the people on Facebook that are following me, I wonder if they even exist. That may probably just Russians hacking me, pretending to be somebody. They're probably all algorithms. So the question is, at the sensory level, you would not know. Even I might have already been in the machine, right? Maybe the books, I said, I'm going to write these books. They enter the machine, and maybe I'm already in the machine. But Setting that aside for the purpose of discussing what choices I ought to make. Here is a hypothetical situation where I could make a choice. Shravya, would you enter this machine? Without dodging the question by saying, in a way, we already are. I want you to take that decision into your hands and that responsibility in this thought experiment to see if you will enter it.
I think Shravya was actively dodging and the rest are passively dodging. How about you?
No pushing. I'm sure everyone's thinking.
No,
Yeah.
I think my imagination is honestly very small, so I can't imagine a perfect world. So I don't think I would do it just because it's not something I can like touch and feel. So I wouldn't want to go near it.
You wouldn't want to go near it because you don't know. But you're sure about what's going to happen in your future? You're living.
No.
Yeah, but here at least, let's say you will have a good life in it.
Hard to say.
Arnav, I see you have unmuted, so go ahead.
Sorry, someone called me right as I unmuted. I think the challenge that I have is I'm trying to imagine what that happiness would be like, because in this world, we want to, like you said earlier, we want to know the meaning, right? We want purpose. And, you know, in the Matrix, there's that very scene where that person asks to go back into the reality, have steaks, have a nice house, this, that. And, you know, that's fine, but I'm trying to imagine what that perfect happiness would look like. And if I cannot define that now, then I have a challenge of understanding what would I attain if I enter that machine. So for me, I would rather—
You don't know what your life ought to be. How are you living? Randomly? Do you have rules?
Well, from a material level, yes, I know what a nice
That's
life—
all this machine is giving you,
right.
This material.
But that's what I'm saying, is that doesn't satisfy me, because I want to know beyond that, what is that eternal level of happiness that we want, you know, beyond the nature, beyond the, you know, the kind of our nature, or what kind of maybe the gunas that we engage in.
What are
right?
gunas?
There's that. Go ahead.
What are the gunas?
So the kind of the we have right in the Gita. They describe sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, and the idea that there are qualities, I guess, qualities would be the right word, that describe our actions or our behavior or maybe our mindset. And
so what do I experience in the world? How do I experience the world? I experience them sensorially, right? That's how I get knowledge of the world and so on. How many senses are there? 5 senses. So this machine will take care of my 5 senses and input data, and my whole world is composed of my 5 senses, which are going to perceive 5 objects of senses, such as touch, taste, smell, and vision. If my brain were connected to a computer that produced these sensations, then I would experience a world, correct? Is there anything more in this world than the objects of my senses? Do I perceive anything more in this world than the objects of my senses?
Just a quick question. Would like emotions be a part of your senses?
Yeah, if my brain created a virtual reality or a perception of me in a wonderful garden with sweet smelling flowers, a gentle breeze, and someone who is speaking to me and saying, I'm your friend, I'm there for you, etc., I would feel happy. So even sensations of happiness come from that. So let us draw a line now. If the 5 objects of senses are in the world, and if I am equipped with these 5 senses, there is something common between, some correspondence between these things. So these are the 5 elements. So when the Gita or any text talks about the 5 elements, it does not talk about elements as elements on the periodic table, but 5 components that on the gross level are the objects of the senses, and on the subtle level, these are the senses. So the 5 elements we are talking about are part of the matrix of experience of this world. The 5 elements in themselves are produced according to a modulation in nature, or a wave of creation. And these are the 3 gunas. Rajas is excitation. Tamas is the trough of this wave. And then you have sattva as the baseline. This entire realm of change is in turn because of prakriti, or nature. For a Hindu, it does not matter if one is in a machine, whether one is outside. From the Hindu perspective, the body itself is an experience machine, which is experiencing this 5-fold sensory input. Where is the singularity here? It's not there. Ultimately, singularity stands apart as the Purusha. This is called the Sankhya system. And according to the Sankhya system, the purpose is to ask, am I real? Is the world real? And step out of the experience machine altogether, once and for all. Is the Samkhya philosophy clear to you? It's not a bunch of names. It's not just the 3 gunas, the 5 elements, memorize them. It's based on an analysis of the experience of the world I have. And in this manifold, even if I were in a machine, the perceiver is real. I am real. Even if the entire perceived world is just perception. Which leads me to an interesting question. Has anyone seen matter? We say material. Has anyone seen matter? No. I see the form of an apple, I feel the taste of an apple, I feel the weight of an apple with the touch and its surface, its color. But have I experienced just plain materiality? No, I haven't. Hindu philosophy is so far ahead that it is beyond the superstition of materiality. It takes experience, works with it until what is necessary for my experience turns out to be the perceiver, which is the Purusha. Nature has her laws, which is its dharma. The Purusha has its law, which is moksha dharma, to be separate, to be beyond. Pranit?
Yes, doctor. So your mentions of perception and reality and everything kind of sparked a saying, "Jagame Maya," the world
Yes,
is an illusion.
yes, yes.
Yeah, and it's just like what I always thought of that was there is the truth, and then there is the fog that is our preconceived notions that we see the truth through. And you're going beyond that and saying that it's not just what we perceive, it's, I don't even know where to go from there.
Why should I tell you? You have an intellect, and there's Krishna speaking, you ask him. But you understand, right? I cannot, with the confidence of Western philosophers, if they are philosophers, say that the world is exactly as it appears to me. Or, to put it in a different way, what is it about reality that allows virtual reality to produce itself and be convincing? Right? Look at the word term virtual reality. What the hell does that even mean? They're opposite to each other. If virtual means fake or unreal, virtual reality means unreal reality. There is something about nature that allows itself to present itself as real, even though it's not real. And there's nothing in my sensory apparatus to tell me the difference. But there is something in me that resists unreality. I will not enter the machine because it'll be fake. Well,
It's
you
very
enter
tempting.
the body, which is an experience machine. Because of the body, you will have X number of experiences, and then the body will go. You will need, like a new car, like a new phone, you will need a new body to continue those experiences. Without moksha, you are perpetually in the market for experience machines and programs to run in it. And after 1,000 lives, 1,000,000,000 lives of marriages and loves and disappointments and careers and so on, at some point, the experiencer has enough. That having enough is called vairagya. And then one opens the door, disconnects this perceptual apparatus, and says, I am free. That is moksha. Now, if you're just in the perceptual realm, you can never even get beyond to a happy experience if you live adharmically. You have to follow the dharma of the program. Otherwise, the program will trap you in further and further and further. You'll go to jail, or you'll end up with 3 failed marriages. But if you play the dharma game well here, slowly the rajas and the tamas go into an equilibrium, and that purusha will shine out in you. And you will want nothing else. That, in a nutshell, is what Hinduism is: an inquiry into the nature of experience to identify in that experience what is real. The perceiver is real. In the perceived, there are only particulars. It is only when I understand the singular in another person will the Purusha in that person radiate. Respect, love, beauty, truth. These are properties of Purusha, not of Prakriti. And then seeking that, because the Jiva naturally wants that which is real, one proceeds in this life. One understands that one needs a job. One understands that to get a job, you have to be a brahmachari, meaning one has to sit down, study, prepare, work hard, get the job. Once you get the job, you know you have to satisfy your desires dharmically in the context of love and being a householder. And then finally, you seek moksha. How complete this is. How complete a map this is. How economical it is to apportion your life and have your goals mapped out for. How tragic it is for someone like Trump to go that far in life. And I think on his deathbed, he's going to say, I want to run again or something. It's just sad. It's not even dignified. It's not even how that great tailor's wife died. She sat up. And she, on her deathbed, turned to me and said, are you okay? She was philosophically more advanced than I was then. She probably still is, because when I think of her, my eyes tear up. I will never forget her. I will never forget the singularity she taught me. Never. So the final thing is, in this hall of perceptions, which this experience machine, how do I know that this is just an experience machine? There are glitches in the program. What are the glitches? Somebody shows up that doesn't fit in, such as a blue person wearing a peacock feather and playing the flute. And I look at that and think, is it history? Is it myth? Is it like, how do I categorize that? It's not categorizable because that is Purusha. It's not Prakriti. I go to the temple. This is a pillar. This is a statue of an elephant. But that is Vishnu. It's no longer just a stone. Right? Right? Have you ever noticed in a temple how you burn incense and offer it to the Lord? The incense at first goes in the direction of the Lord, but it knows better, and it goes in all four directions because it understands the omnipresence. I'm being poetic here. Don't be so literal. Yeah. Poetry is important. how it understands that all-present Brahman. And when I see that incense in a temple, my heart also goes to the icon, and it goes, and I'm struggling to think, oh, this Lord is everywhere present. Okay? All right. You can ask me some questions for 10 minutes, but I'm also old. So my experience machine needs some Pennzoil and some sleep. So if you have any questions, ask me. Always remember that I congratulated you, each one of you young kids, for being Hindu. It is a choice your Jiva made. And it did not make this choice without billions of years of wisdom. Okay, it's a unique opportunity to be a Hindu, to think of the body as an experience machine, and to have our icons, to have our Krishna, to have our gods to help us out of this experience machine. Okay, okay, questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, since our body is nothing but an experience machine, how do we kind of remind or be aware of the fact that it is just that and not be caught in the experience itself? Because experience by their very natures can be desirable, I guess. So you tend to want to have more experiences.
There are two things. One is teaching, Shastra. You're born a Hindu, you have a scripture called the Gita, you have a lifestyle that was created by the rishis, that Brahman, out of its compassion, appeared in the form of Ganapati, Parvati, Shiva, Vishnu, and moreover, the avatars, which are there as a literary corpus of that Brahman shining out in the hearts of the rishis for us. We've been given all this apparatus. By following this, we can lead ourselves out. But it's not only Purusha, but Prakriti also has a trick up her sleeve. She hits you on the head with adversity, death, and so on. Imagine if a farmer was very successful in his lifetime. In his next life, he would want nothing more than to repeat this life on and on until suddenly there's adversity and he loses his fields and stuff. And then his thoughts turn to, God, this is not a good game. Maybe there is something more. So adversity is the painful way, but the pleasurable way is through bhakti, knowledge, and being a good Hindu at all times, or at least twice a day when you do your puja in the morning and in the evening. That's my answer, Aditya. Any other questions? Thinking? Arnav.
I have a question, but since I spoke, if someone else has a question, I would.
Don't be polite. When you go to a buffet, you want to push everybody away and go first, because they always take my gulab jamuns and I show up at the buffet being all very polite and there's just a little gravy left.
Okay, well, so the way that you explain choice and jiva, I wonder from a philosophical standpoint, if you are you familiar with, for instance, the conversation on hard consciousness or the hard problem in consciousness? Mm-hmm. Have you heard those types of, so how do you reconcile something like the hard problem in consciousness or those discussions that happen?
Would you like to explain it to other students too?
I think it would be better if you explain it rather than me, maybe.
I don't want to take the conversation away because you're talking to a philosopher, and I will just get carried away, and I will produce things like problems of time and the two frame time A and time B, and everybody will get bored. But stick to just you as the experiencer, right? And I remain continuous. There's a continuity to my consciousness, which is of a different order than my intentional consciousness of objects, perceptual consciousness of objects. For the time being, it's enough simply to bracket off the perceptual world and say, treat phenomena as phenomena, experiences as experiences, and look for the experiencer. Between you, me, and the fence post, Shankara has solved that question, but I don't want to get into it. At least read the first portion of the Brahma Sutras, where he actually, his introduction, where he says that the consciousness is not of the kind of that which is perceived, which is inert. So he gives the notion of inertness and personhood by saying, when I say I versus the object, subject versus the object, he takes that and applies it to my consciousness too. And he says, when I talk about myself, I say the body, which is inert, I endow it with intentionality and consciousness, and I take consciousness and endow it with materiality. And he calls this mutual superimposition. So the problem of hard consciousness reifies consciousness in a certain way. And so reifies means objectifies it. And Shankara simply explains it relationally and gets over that problem. There has not been a question in Western philosophy that has not been answered in Indian philosophy, I must say. And this is why, and by the way, this is why Marxism will fail, because Marxism does not take into account of a human being the desire portion, right? Because it has to give a material account of the class system, revolutions, and classless society. Marxism does not take into account human desire and human greed. Therefore, Marxism will necessarily fail because it is working with an insufficient definition of a human being as a desiring agent. To avoid that, the account of consciousness Shankara gives is sufficient. You all can also email me. I will answer your questions. How many of you think Hinduism is a load of bull? Okay, I've done my job. Isn't it difficult? I mean, isn't it wonderful that there are all of us sitting? I mean, think about, when I was young, there was nobody to talk to. I had to pretend that Christmas was a thing. Pranit.
So, kind of going off the last point you mentioned, is Hinduism a load of bull? I feel like some people.
You see, Arnav, we lose audiences when we become philosophical. This is why in the temples, instead of all that, they just serve dosa and sweets because they're smart. That's why Hinduism survives, by the way. Because, even if you don't believe in God, who's not going to believe in the cafeteria there? Okay. Pranit?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the people who started the set of traditions, like they set it out and they did their best to inform the next generation the way they could. Unfortunately, while the transfer of knowledge is complete, the dilution of knowledge happens sometimes in some generations, which I feel that it's also our job to remove the bull from the gold, so to speak.
What goal would that be?
Any sort of superstitions that have no basis. There are some practices that people are unable to justify or explain, but they just remember, oh, my mother did this or my father did this, and they're still doing it. And some of them have basis, like using turmeric, on special occasions. And
Life is too short to reinvent whether there is a basis for turmeric or not. Unless you're a research scientist into the properties of turmeric, life is too short. Take it for what it is. If your grandma uses turmeric and she makes sure that the curry tastes good, why mess with that? What I'm saying is the burden that has been placed on us is to have to justify everything about being a Hindu. That you have to answer for every superstition. It is like an interrogation. And the only way you're going to free yourself is by saying, I don't give a damn about being interrogated. You want to talk to my grandma? Go ask her. I'm going to be a Hindu my way. And I'm not answerable to anybody about these baited interrogatory questions. They always ask me well-meaningly about Ganesha. How elephant myth, real? My answer is, if I put a she-donkey on my altar and worship it, it's my problem. I'm not answerable to you. That's the freedom, right? That's true freedom. True freedom is to end the interrogative gaze. That you're answerable, as if, and we've internalized it as well. Sometimes I ask myself the same thing, Pranit, is there a basis for this? And I'm like, why am I being a cop to myself? Was there a basis for colonization? Was there a basis for Trump? Does every Christian has to answer for the anti-vax people? Why should every Hindu have to answer for everything? So my activism as a Hindu is to resist myself to the interrogative voice in my head and in my ears, frankly, and say, no, I'm perfectly fine the way I am. And Hinduism requires no defense or explanation. It has produced some art, it has produced some literature, if a billion people read the Gita, and even in a movie, every time shit hits the fan, there's the heroine in a Krishna temple crying. So it does its job. And I'm proud to belong to it. The interrogative aspect is a real wound on Hindus. It's a real wound. And people, thinkingly or unthinkingly, play that power game, asking for explanations. Do Hindus really eat with their hands? No. We eat with our feet, but we're just being polite and eating with our hands so as to not annoy your rational, sensitive minds. Is there a caste system? Yeah. When was the last time a white millionaire invited me into their house? There's a caste system. Is there a caste system? Yeah, otherwise people wouldn't have to protest saying Black Lives Matter. There's a caste system. When we attempt to answer and justify, we feed into the feedback loop of that interrogative oversight. Now, whatever you think of Gandhi, did you see the movie Gandhi, where the Queen of England says to Gandhi, India has so many problems. It would be irresponsible for the Queen to just let you people go. You know what Gandhi said? Your Majesty, we have a lot of problems, but they are our problems, not yours. What a beautiful line. It's my grandmother you're talking about with the turmeric, Pranith. And you're lucky that it's me and not my grandmother. You question her turmeric. You don't know how these South Indian women get. You'll be running down the street howling.
My family's from there, so I totally get the South Indian.
I don't mean to turn your question around or anything. You all are the hope of Hinduism. Our generation and the generation, I was telling Ramnath yesterday, some of our generations before us, we completely messed up. We got political independence, but we did not get spiritual or intellectual independence. We only existed in the gaze of the white male. Sad, huh? But now you all can be just yourselves, beautiful, thoughtful, spiritual, independent, empowered, and free. You don't have to be what they tell you to be, and you don't have to give an account to anybody. You do what pleases you according to your scripture. According to your scripture, huh? Otherwise, we'll all end up in mental or legal institutions. I'm asked, is that an Indian feast? My colleagues ask me, I heard there was an Indian feast. And I say, yes, it's an Indian feast. Are you celebrating? Yes, I'm celebrating. What do you do? If I wanted you to know, I would have invited you. I am under no obligation to turn my spiritual life into a documentary on PBS. Okay. Who was asking me a question that I rudely interrupted?
Oh, no, it was me, Shravya. When,
My
when you say
partner
like,
always tells me that I never let a sentence go by without interrupting it.
no worries. I was just wondering when you say like according to your scripture, do you mean like the collective Hindu scripture, or do you mean like is that also singular, like scripture as in like in a singular
The
sense?
Hindu scripture is the Mahabharata because it also contains the Ramopakhyana or the Ramayana in it. Yudhishthira asks in the forest, is there anyone who has suffered more than I? And typical Indian male, at least South Indian male, because in my family, men are always crying with good reason. And so he says, Markandeya says, no, Maitreya says, I know the story of Rama. Let me tell you that story. The Bhagavad Gita is the meta text in the Mahabharata that summarizes the philosophy of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is in itself a literary experience machine in which the whole universe is simulated. And so it is the main text. The Vedas and the Vedantas are all immersed or contained in the Mahabharata because the author of the Mahabharata was also the editor of the Vedas. So if you hold on to the Mahabharata or at least the Bhagavad Gita, then you have it all. But it is a plural, or it's an expansive tradition. There is also the Bhagavata Purana, but the Bhagavata Purana is narrated, for example, by Shuka, who is the son of Vyasa, to Parikshit, and Raja Parikshit is the grandson of Arjuna. So they maintain a textual continuity, and the core philosophy that moksha is to be attained through the worship of Saguna Brahman, or Brahman with form, is never changed. It is everywhere. Hinduism is quite consistent. And this I did not know because we are Indians. We go to the supermarket. I mean, you go to India, it's like everybody seems to be doing everything their own way, but there is an unspoken harmony in it. So even so in the textual tradition, Sarvopanishado Gavo, all the Upanishads are cows. Dugdha Gopala Nandana. The joy of the Gopas is Krishna, is the one who milks it. Partho Vatsa. Arjuna is the calf, because when you don't just milk a cow, you have to take the calf. And when she smells the calf, she produces and easily gives milk. And the Bhagavad Gita is that Amrita that Krishna has milked from all the Upanishads. So Gita is very, very important. And if you should have one scripture, it should be Gita. If you have Gita, you have Shruti in the form of the Upanishads and Smriti in the form of Itihasa Purana. So you have it all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Only 700 verses. You can memorize it or at least read it a chapter a day.
Do you have a favorite translation?
Gambirananda has a good translation. And the good thing about Gambirananda's translation is that it also has Shankara Bhashya in it. So you don't have to read all of Shankara Bhashya, but at least a few terms, he gives the meanings. And there's one book that a friend of mine is very fond of. Let me see what that is. I'm going to put this, if you're doing it as self-study, Svadhyaya means self-study. I recommend this because apparently it has little stories and from Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, etc.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good translation. And then I would like to show you how India might look to outsiders like a sort of freelance gurudom, but the vidya that is going on there is pretty well bound and traditional. So, for example, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was illiterate. He could not read, but thanks to his good karmas, he was intuitively born with a full knowledge of things, but still he cites his teachers and other poets when he teaches. And see how simply he talks about what I explained so laboriously with Sankhya and the experience machine. I will share that with you just to create in you a sense about how deceptively simplistic Indian thought appears. Then the master, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, sang the following song in his melodious voice. In the world's busy marketplace, O Shyama, Shyama is the dark-colored Kali that Ramakrishna worshipped. In the world's busy marketplace, O Shyama, you are flying kites. High up they soar on the winds of hope, held fast by Maya's string. Their frames are human skeletons, their sails of the three gunas made. But all their curious workmanship is merely for ornament. Upon the kite strings, you have rubbed the manja paste of worldliness. Does anyone know what manja paste is? Manja is they break glass, crush glass, add pigment and glue, and they coat the string with it. So when you fly a kite, you can get into kite fights. And if your manja string is strong, you can cut off the other guy's kite. Okay, so that's called manjas. So you have rubbed the manja paste of worldliness so as to make each straining strand all the more sharp and strong. Out of 100,000 kites, at best, one or two break free. And you laugh and clap your hands, oh mother, watching them go free. So this idea of moksha presented in this form, and the mother, who is the creatrix of this universe, clapping when a jiva breaks free of the bondage of samsara, is a beautiful image. But here he's quoting an inspired, ecstatic poet called Ram Prasad. And on that note, I think if there are no more questions, we'll call it an evening. But if there are questions, I can answer them. Ramnath, do you have anything more to say?
Just a couple of things. Actually, so I think we are right on dot. But since Professor Adluri has solicited once more, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. But there'll be a lot more chances.
And
hopefully.
whenever in life you have a question, you can write to me. If I don't know the answer, I'll refer you to someone who might know the answer. And if they don't know the answer, it was your karma not to know.
So, I think looks like there are no further questions for now. So I just hand off to Shravya to conclude the session. But before she does that, I really, on my personal behalf and all our behalves, I'd like to really thank you for making the time.
Oh, no problem. Not
You
at
know,
all.
and
To
and and
talk to these kids or anytime, anytime.
and I think for the US Svadharma Forum, this is a pilot. It's an experimental, first cycle we have started, and hopefully I've gotten a whiff of what's out there. There's so much that has happened in the last 20, 30 years that we all must be aware of,
Mhm.
at the very least, so that we can, learn more about our own traditions,
Mm.
which we have chosen as,
Yeah.
as Lori said.
Pranit, I thank you especially for raising that question about answerability and basis for superstitions and stuff. All of life is a superstition based on nothing, a superstition of a happy ending, which is not there. But one of the first things we need to do is to cut out these voices that constantly question us. So, as Ramnathji was just saying, so we can at least think meaningfully, properly, authentically, according to our tradition. We may or may not jive with every aspect of the tradition, but the tradition does not expect you to. That's why we have a menu of gods to choose from. Of course, you always have to choose Ganapati as the appetizer, but the entree, you can choose whatever Ishtha you have and proceed. So that is very, very important, that cutting out that external interrogative. It's just oppressive. It's just oppressive. Yashas? Did you have a question, Yashas? Okay.
So I won't take much time. In fact, when we had a chat a while ago, when I had invited Professor Lurie, I had just made up this topic of reclaiming the narrative. So he has covered that too, as you as you might have noticed. Um,
Hard to keep me driving in the lane between the lanes.
no. That's the placeholder, as you know. I mean, and this is just perfect. We couldn't have asked for anything more whatsoever. So, Shravya, it's up to you, to conclude the session. And also, I want to say that this is the pièce de résistance of the first cycle, and hopefully, we will all get our act together, and you will tell me what we will do further, how we will go further with this forum. Shravya.
Thank you so much, Mahodaya. Um, I honestly don't know what to say. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming here to talk to us. Starting from when we put the flyer out to the very first speaker who joined us, everybody has been been having us like so eager to listen to you speak. And honestly, it was just as much as a treat as everybody said that it would be. It was.
Thank you.
I'll just say one thing. I mean, every session, people here know I ask like so many questions. It gets almost tiring. Okay, it was just so profound. I haven't been able to. I'm still processing it. I'm probably gonna have to watch the recording like a couple of times to at least get
I
a
did
good.
the places where I use bad words. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, it was like I mean, and I think I speak for everybody when I say I think we was listening to a story, and then all of a sudden there was a thought experiment, and then we went to Sankhya philosophy, and the way that you explained it, I personally have never heard of it in that sort of
Yeah.
sense. It was really
You
amazing.
should
Thank you.
not go for just abstract philosophy because that itself becomes another trap. So I try to keep it real. I mean, and I'm also aging. So at my age, ज़्यादा नखरे के लिए time नहीं है. So I have to just stick to what is real, what is important, and move on. If you don't mind, I'd like to say a prayer and then
Please.
go because I'm a Hindu. This prayer is about Vishnu, whom Brahma, Varuna, Rudra, and Maruta, all the other gods, praise constantly with divine songs composed of Vedas, Upanishads, Kramapathas, and so on, whose end neither the Devas nor the Asuras know, but through dhyana, we can see that Vishnu. Okay. Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutah Stunvanti Divyaistavai Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadai Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam na vidhusura suragana devaya tasmai namaha. Hopefully, I'll see you all many times and and enjoy this kind of conversation many times in the future.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Paresh. I
Shubharatri.
hope so too.
So I think there's a good time to complete what you wanted to say, Shravya, and then we will go off stream after you have told, and we can stay back, for a little chat, all of us.
Sure. So to everybody, like Ramnath Mahodaya said, this was a pilot program. Honestly, I mean, I don't know what we were looking for, but we were just looking to get a taste of, like he says, of whatever is out there. But this is just the beginning of a much larger forum. So please let us know if you have any ideas of, how you'd like to take this forward. Do you want to do more sessions like this? Do you want to have maybe more interactive discussions amongst ourselves? Or like a monthly, even if we don't have anything planned, maybe at least like a monthly activity that we can do, like that drawing game we played or something like that. So please let us know.
So basically, it is time for you to think about what you want, okay, according to your swabhavas. And then we can build a collective asmakam bhava. We can build a collective swabhava, and I can try to help manifest what you're all trying to do. I can be your wild card to make things happen. So we will try to have a session or two so that such a discussion is facilitated, mainly amongst you, because as you all know, this whole thing came about. The genesis of this was through a conversation between Shravya and me. We had several conversations, and then rather than me talking alone and giving my opinions and so on, it's for all of you to individually, listen to, I would say, multiple opinions that are well grounded and that are not just their own opinion, just because they made it up and somebody else said it, kind of thing. It is something that each of them has, or for something that has unfolded for each of them over a long period of time through different kinds of sadhanas. So let's end this streaming with the prayer, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. So Naisargi or Shravya, whoever, or anyone.
Sure. Does anybody want to go?
Anybody wants to? Harshit, how about you? end with the Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shubharatri. So for all the YouTube folks who are watching us, thank